So the first question for today is, in my practice, I reached a point where I have almost no thoughts during the day. Maybe 80% of the thought of the day, I am free of thoughts. By thoughts, I mean mental chatter. I don't think I have strong attachments or desires for this world. When I am self attentive, it feels like I am just being. I don't have to do anything. It feels like self attention is happening to me. Instead, I am actively doing something. I feel like I am changeless awareness in which body, mind, sensations, perceptions, or in other words, all phenomena appear and disappear. My question is, do I have to make some more effort when I am in that state of being? Even if I try to make effort, it still feels the same. Is it wrong to just be, being as awareness in which phenomena appear and wait till ego dissolves? Or do I actively have to do something more? When I actively try to turn more to myself, it feels the same. Nothing changes. Problem is that in that state, I am still aware of bodily sensations. So I am not turned to myself 180 degrees. That is the first question.
Right. It's always difficult when people describe their practice to really, because the practice of self-attentiveness cannot be described in words. It's just being aware of our own being aware I am. And we all know I am, but can we describe what it is to be aware I am? We cannot, because it is something. It is. It has. It is nirvisesha. It has no. No. No characteristics that can be captured in words. So I can only guess at what is happening from what is described. However, there are some points that clearly need to be clarified here. Firstly, mental chatter is just one form of thought. As Bhagavan has clarified, everything other than Satchit, the mere awareness of our own being, I am, is a thought. So Bhagavan says the whole world is nothing but thoughts. Time is thought, is a thought. Space is a thought. Everything is a thought except for our own being. So just because the mental chatter is reduced doesn't mean that we are free of thoughts. All the things that are described here, even the idea there are no thoughts during the day is a thought. The day is a thought. 80% of the day is a thought. Both the presence of thought is a thought, and the absence of thought is equally a thought. For example, the state that we are all familiar with that is genuinely devoid of thought is sleep. From the perspective of the waking state, waking or dream state, we say sleep is a state devoid of thought, devoid of phenomena. There's an absence of thoughts in sleep. But while actually sleeping, we are not experiencing an absence of thoughts. We are in a state that is beyond all thought, beyond both the presence and the absence of thoughts. The absence of thought is only a thought that we have in the waking state. In sleep, we are not aware of anything other than our own being, I am. So there's no thought, I am now free of thoughts. So even the idea of being free of thoughts is itself a thought. So when we are self-attentive, we should be our aim should be to attend only to our own being. Whether thoughts appear or not should not concern us. If we are concerned either about the appearance of thoughts or the disappearance of thoughts, our attention is on something other than ourself. We need to attend only to ourself. And when he says, for example, I feel I am changeless awareness in which body, mind, sensations, perceptions, or in other words, all phenomena appear and disappear. The awareness in which all these phenomena, the body, the mind, the world, perception, sensations, all these appear and disappear, is not in the changeless awareness. They all appear only in the mind. In other words, they appear in the view of ego, which is not a changeless awareness, because it appears in waking and dream, it disappears in sleep. So it has its rising and its subsiding, and it is it is constantly taking the shape of the thoughts that are appearing within it. So the changeless awareness is only that fundamental awareness that shines alone in sleep. That fundamental awareness that shines alone in sleep, in other words, the awareness I am, that continues throughout all three states, because that alone is what is real, that alone is what is eternal. But in that, there is only pure being. There are no phenomena in that. It's only when we rise as ego that all these phenomena appear. So long as we are aware of any phenomena of any kind whatsoever, we who are aware of that, we are aware of ourselves as an individual. In other words, it's only as ego that we're aware of all these things. Regarding the sentence in which the paragraph in which he says, when I am self-attentive, it feels like I'm just being. I don't have to do anything. Yes, that is true. If we are truly self-attentive, that is the state of just being. We don't have to do anything. We just have to hold on to the self-attentiveness. Being attending to anything other than ourself is a doing. Attending to ourself is a subsidence of the doer. In other words, it's a subsidence of ego. To the extent to which we hold on to our being, we as ego subside back into our being. So self-attentiveness is not an activity, it is a cessation of activity. But so long as there's awareness of body, mind, sensations, perceptions, and other phenomena, we are not being self-attentive. We are not just being. So there's a slight inconsistency here. And he also says, it feels like self-attention is happening to me instead of I'm actively doing something. Yes, ultimately, there is some truth in this, that self-attentiveness is happening to us, but we have to make an effort to hold on to that self-attentiveness, because the nature of ego is to be constantly grasping form, as Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Ulujunapadu. That is, ego cannot come into existence, it cannot stand, and it cannot flourish without constantly grasping form. Grasping form means attending to things other than itself. That is, all phenomena are forms. Ego, it's not a phenomena, it's a formless demon, as Bhagavan describes it in that verse. So ego has no form of its own. Since it's got no form of its own, it's got no separate existence of its own. It seems to acquire a separate existence only when it rises and thereby grasps the form of a body as I. So in its essential nature, ego is formless. In other words, ego is just pure awareness. But it becomes ego when it rises and simultaneously projects and grasps a body as I. So being aware of anything other than ourself is is an activity. All things that appear are all these forms or phenomena, they are what are called vishayas. The inclination to attend to vishayas are what are called vishaya vasanas. So long, throughout the waking and dream state, vishaya vasanas are constantly rising because that is, the vishaya vasanas are not ego, but it is the nature of ego to have vishaya vasanas. Because ego cannot, as Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Arunachala, because ego cannot rise, stand, or flourish without constantly grasping form. In other words, without constantly attending to vishayas, it is the nature of the ego to have vishaya vasanas. By spiritual practice, we are weakening the vishaya vasanas, but vishaya vasanas cannot be destroyed without destroying ego, because so long as there's ego, there will be, to a greater or lesser extent, there will definitely be vishaya vasanas. And as Bhagavan says in the 10th paragraph of Nana, vishaya vasanas are rise in countless numbers like ocean waves. That is, throughout the waking and dream state, it's all a play of vishaya vasanas. That all the phenomena we are aware of are nothing but projections of the vishaya vasanas. So the vishaya vasanas are active throughout the waking and dream state. The vishaya vasanas will subside only to the extent to which we as ego subside. And we as ego will subside only to the extent to which we are self-attentive. And being self-attentive means not attending to or being concerned about anything other than ourselves. So if we are truly self-attentive, we won't notice whether there's a body, a mind, or sensations or perceptions. That's if we are deeply self-attentive. But most of us in practice, we are not so deeply self-attentive. We continue to be aware of these phenomena, but even though we may be aware of them, we shouldn't be concerned about them. We shouldn't be attending to them. We should be trying more and more to attend to ourselves. So if we are practicing self-attentiveness correctly, we will constantly be having to resist the outward pull of the vishaya vasanas. Outward pull, outward push, whichever we take it. That is, vishaya vasanas, all vasanas are inclinations. So we have very strong inclinations to attend to things, to anything other than ourselves. So the more we try to attend to ourselves, the more our vishaya vasanas will resist that. The more we will, the deeper we go within, the more pressure there is, so to speak, to rise up again. So self-attentiveness is a struggle. That is, it's not a struggle to do anything, but it's a struggle just to be as we are. That is, our real nature is just being. So our real nature doesn't have to make any effort to just be. But as ego, we have to make effort to just be. And the effort we have to make is to hold on to our being. To the extent to which we hold on to our being, we as ego subside. And to the extent to which we subside, we are just being. So if we feel we are in a state where we are not having to make effort, then that is not self-attentiveness. We are lulling ourselves into that. That is, we need to clearly distinguish between manolaya and self-attentiveness. That is, when we are trying to be self-attentive, we slip. We get diverted away from our self-attentiveness, or we slip down from the state of self-attentiveness in one of two ways. That is, the state of slipping down from self-attentiveness is what is called pramada. Pramada means negligence or inattentiveness. It particularly means that inattentiveness to ourselves, that is not being self-attentive. So we lose our hold on self-attentiveness in one of two ways. Either we get diverted by thoughts, in other words, our attention goes away towards other things, or on the other hand, we subside into a sleep-like state of laya. Both if we are holding on to self-attentiveness, we won't get carried away by thoughts, and we won't slip into a state of laya. That is, a state of complete laya is a state like sleep in which we're not aware of anything. But during practice, it's possible to lull oneself into a state of semi-laya, where we are not completely subsided, but we are lulled into a peaceful state. We can be lulled into that state only to the extent to which we are not self-attentive. If we are really self-attentive, we will not subside into that. We will not be lulled into such a state. And if we are really self-attentive, we will be constantly having to hold firmly onto self-attentiveness in order to avoid being carried away by our Vishaya vasanas. One thing that is very important to understand, Bhagavan made this clear, but many people don't correctly grasp this thing. Many people take being free of thoughts to be equivalent to self-attentiveness. It is not. Bhagavan said regarding yoga, in the second sutra of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, he defines what he means by yoga. Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. That chitta vritti means the mental activity. So the restraining or stopping of mental activity, that is yoga. So the aim of yoga is to stop thoughts, basically, to stop mental activity. Bhagavan said that is not practical, because if you try to stop mental activity, the result will be manolaya. You subside into a sleep-like state. It may be given a name like Kevala Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but essentially it is no different from sleep. It is just a state. The difference between, as in verse 13 of Upadeshundya, Bhagavan says, dissolution of mind is of two kinds, laya and nasa. What is dissolved in laya will rise again. When it is dissolved in nasa, it will not rise again. So the temporary dissolution of mind is called manolaya. That is all we can achieve if we try to stop thoughts. In order to achieve manonasa means destruction of the mind. That is, the root of the mind is ego. So destruction of mind means destruction of ego. Ego is a false awareness of ourself. So it can be destroyed only by correct awareness of ourself. So self-knowledge alone can give bring about a manonasa. Anything we do just to bring about the dissolution of mind without knowing what we actually are will result only in manolaya. So Bhagavan said, it's recorded in Lakshman Sharma's recorded it in Mahayoga towards the end. There's a section, I think, more sayings of the sage or something like that. One of the things he records there, and the same thing is recorded in slightly different words also in talks. Bhagavan says, in yoga they say chitta vritti nirodha. That is not practical. I say Atma-vichara. Atma-vichara is another way of saying Atma-vichara, self-investigation, because it's only by attending to ourself that we can bring about dissolution of the mind in such a way that it never rises again, because only by self-attentiveness can we know what we actually are. in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, after saying that yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, in the next verse he says something to the effect, I can't remember the exact words, but he says something that to the effect that then one will be established in Swarupa. But Swarupa means our own real nature, what we actually are. But we are, in a certain sense, Manolaya is a state of being established in Swarupa, because there's nothing other than Swarupa in the state of Manolaya. But the mind, ego is not destroyed. Because ego is not destroyed, it will definitely rise again. So we are not looking for a temporary state of being established in Swarupa. Our aim is to be permanently established, not even in Swarupa, as Swarupa. To be as we actually are. In order to be as we actually are, we need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. And we can be aware of ourselves as we actually are only by self-attentiveness. That is why for example, in verse 13 of Upadesha, Bhagavan points out that dissolution is of two kinds, Laya and Nasa. And then in verse 14, he says, the mind which will be subdued by controlling the breath. Subdued means it'll be lulled into a state of Laya by controlling the breath. Only if that mind, before being lulled completely into Laya, only if that mind is sent on the Orvari will its form die. Will it die? But what Bhagavan means by Orvari, that term Orvari can be interpreted in two ways. Vari means path, or can mean either Aurum, which means knowing or investigating, or it can mean one. So, but whichever way we take it, if we take it as the one path Bhagavan is referring to is the path of self-investigation, as is clearly implied if we take the other meaning, Aurum Vari, the path of investigating or path of knowing. So Bhagavan is very, very emphatic. Only if we direct our mind on this path of investigation. In other words, only if we are self-attentive, that's the only way to bring about the destruction of mind. So if we are practicing self-attentiveness, we should not be concerned whether there are thoughts or not. In the 6th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, Ettene enengal erinomena. However many thoughts rise, so what? So we shouldn't be concerned. Let there be thoughts or let there not be thoughts. It's no concern of ours. If we are concerned about trying to stop the thoughts, then our attention is on the thoughts. Or if we're concerned about trying to be free of thoughts, our attention is on the thoughts. We shouldn't be concerned about thoughts at all. Let them appear or let them not appear. It's no concern of ours. That's what Bhagavan says towards the at the end of the verse 6 of Arunachala Ashtakam. In what Bhagavan says in that verse is, he begins by saying, Undoru porul arivoli ulameni. That is, there is one porul, one reality, one substance. You, the heart, the light of awareness. You, in that context, means Arunachala. Arunachala means our own Swarupa, our own real nature. That alone is what actually exists. So we alone actually exist. But in that, there is one thing that is not other than that, that there's one Adiseya Shakti, one extraordinary power that exists in that and is not other than that. That extraordinary power is the power of Maya, which is nothing but ego or mind. And then he describes how from that all the thoughts proceed from that, and the whole world, both the internal world of mental phenomena and the external world of seemingly physical phenomena, they all proceed only from that Adiseya Shakti, namely the mind. Bhagavan refers to the same Adiseya Shakti in the fourth paragraph of Nana, when he says the mind is an Adiseya Shakti that exists in Atma-swarupa. It causes all thoughts to appear. So he's referring there to mind or ego, or mind as ego. But so after describing how the world is projected, he then ends that verse by saying, Arul Kundre, that means Arul Kundre means hill of grace. Nindrida Sendrida Ninevida Vendre. That what that implies is let them stop or let them go on. They are not other than you. So when we are practicing self-attentiveness, we should be concerned only to attend to ourselves. Let the thoughts appear or let them not appear. It's no concern of ours. Our only concern should be to attend to ourselves. So whenever anyone writes to me about their practice and they start talking about having no thoughts or their thoughts lessening or whatever, once that is, for me, that is a red light, an alarm bell, but indicates that person is concerned about thoughts and is therefore not attending to himself. If we're attending to ourselves, it doesn't matter whether thoughts appear or not. Bhagavan says, as I said earlier, in the sixth paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, however many thoughts arise, so what? As and when each thought arises, it is necessary to vigilantly investigate to whom it has arisen. So that's our whole aim should be turning out. We shouldn't be concerned by what appears. To whom does it appear? That should be our sole concern. So we should be constantly making that effort to turn our attention away from whatever appears back towards ourself, the one to whom it appears. That alone is the practice of self-investigation. If we just get lulled into a state where there's less mental activity, where it's into a sort of state of quietude, that is not self-attentiveness. That is just a state of, it's not exactly laya, because if we're completely in laya, it's a state like sleep, but it's a state coming close to laya, just lulling the mind into a very pleasant state. People sometimes experience very blissful states in meditation. But Adi Shankara, in one of his songs, one of the things he warns against is getting carried away by those blissful states or getting seduced by the blissful states that arise in meditation. That is not our aim. Our ultimate aim is to be eternally blissful. But any bliss that appears and disappears is not our goal. So anything that appears or disappears is not real. So that is not what we're seeking. We are trying to attend to that which alone is permanent, namely our own being, I am. That should be our sole concern. Whether thoughts appear or not need not concern us. If we are concerned about thoughts, if we notice whether there are thoughts or whether there are no thoughts, our attention is going away from ourselves. And as I said earlier, even the absence of thoughts is itself a thought. Because when we truly go beyond thoughts, we go beyond all duality. So we go beyond the pair of opposites, the dvandva of presence of thoughts and absence of thoughts. We go completely beyond thoughts. That is, thoughts do not exist at all there. As Bhagavan says in the first Mangalam verse of Uludunapadu, sorry, I'll just get the verse. So, he begins by saying, if Uludu, if what is were not, would there be being awareness? And then he goes on to say, ulla porul, ulla lara, ulla te, ulla dal. Since the ulla porul, the being substance, the existing substance, in other words, the sat vastu, the thing that actually exists, since it exists in the heart, ulla lara, without thought. So when we go deep into the heart, we go to a state which is beyond the reach of thought. So when we're in a state that is beyond the reach of thought, it's beyond both the present and the absence of thought, because there's no thought that is in that state. No thought exists at all, either to be present or to be absent. So since it exists in the heart without thought, how to meditate on that, or how to think of that ullaporul, which is called the heart. And then he says how to think of it. He gives the answer. Ullate, ullapadi, ullade, ullal. That means being in the heart as it is thinking. Thinking there means meditating, but it doesn't literally mean thinking. It means that is the true meditation on our real nature. Only by being as it is can we truly meditate upon it. Obviously, it's a state beyond thought, but because the question is how to meditate on that which is beyond thought. The only way to meditate upon it is to be as it is without thought. So let us not be concerned about anything that may appear, whether it's the body or the mind or the sensations or the perceptions or any type of phenomena. Let them appear or disappear. We're least concerned about them. Our only concern should be attending to our being. Who am I? That is what we're concerned about. So if we are self-attentive, thoughts will subside. So the chitta-vritti nirodha, which is the aim of yoga, is a byproduct of self-attentiveness, but it is not the aim of self-attentiveness. Why do we attend to ourselves? Because we are trying to know what we actually are. We're attending to ourselves in order to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. To put it in slightly metaphorical language, we are looking at ourselves to see what we are. Of course, we're not literally looking at ourselves, but just using the terms metaphorically. Why do we look at ourselves? We look at ourselves to see what we actually are. So our only concern should be to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. We should not, if we are concerned about thoughts, we are going outwards. We're not going inwards, because inside there are no thoughts at all. So let us not be concerned about thoughts. Let the thoughts appear or not. There's no concern of ours. To whom do they all appear? To me. Who am I? That is what we should be holding on to. So effort is necessary to constantly hold on to that self-attentiveness, because when we are trying to be self-attentive, some people say, oh, whenever I try to be self-attentive, the vasanas start rising. No, they don't start rising. Vasanas start rising from the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we go to sleep at night. Throughout the waking state and throughout the dream state, it's all just a play of vasanas. So vasanas are constantly rising. But we are aware of them as we become more clearly aware of the activity of the vasanas when we try to be self-attentive. But how to deal with the vasanas? We cannot fight the vasanas. The only way that is, vasanas have no strength of their own. The vasanas derive their strength from us. And how they derive their strength from us, to the extent to which we are swayed by any particular vasana, to that extent, that vasana is strengthened. So the vasana is the inclination to attend to things other than ourselves. If we allow any particular vasana to sway us, we will attend to that other thing, and thereby strengthen the vasana. So the only way to weaken the vasanas is not to be swayed by them. So we should attend only to ourselves and not be concerned at all about the vasanas. The vasanas will be constantly rising, and frequently our attention will slip away from ourselves. But we have to bring it back to ourselves, hold on to ourselves. We're not here to fight the vasanas. We're not here to try and push away the thoughts or the perceptions or the phenomena. We are here to hold on to our being. If we hold on to our being, all these things will drop off of their own accord, because these things, that is, the body and world and phenomena, are not binding us. We are holding on to them and complaining that we're bound by them. So if we want to be free of all these things, if we want to untangle ourselves from all these things, we have to stop holding on to them. And the only way to stop holding on to them, the only correct way to stop holding on to them, is to hold on to our being. To the extent to which we hold on to our being, these other things will drop off. We won't even notice them dropping off, because our whole attention will be just on our being. So yes, effort is necessary to, if we're aware of anything other than ourselves, we need to turn our attention away from that other thing, back towards ourselves, back towards the one to whom these things appear. That's what Bhagavan means when he says it is necessary to investigate to whom it appears. Investigating to whom it appears. Some people understand it very superficially, and they think investigating to whom it appears means asking the question, to whom does this appear? That is not investigating to whom. That's just producing another thought. Investigating to whom means turning our attention away from whatever appears back towards ourself, the one to whom it has appeared. Even to say turning it away from that other thing, we shouldn't try to turn our attention away from the other thing. We should try to turn our attention towards ourselves. If we turn our attention towards ourselves, automatically it's withdrawn from other things. So as Bhagavan says, drisya varitam in verse 16 of Upadesha Saram. In Tamil, he says, Veli videngale vittu. Vittu means letting go of. How do we let go of all these phenomena, or these drisya, things that appear, things that are objects or phenomena? How do we let go of them? Only by holding on to ourselves. If we hold on to ourselves, we automatically let go of them. But if we're constantly trying to let go of them, our attention is on them, and we're not really letting go of them. So we can let go of them only by holding on to our own being. So what is necessary is to try more and more and more to attend to our being, and not be concerned about thoughts or phenomena or anything else. So he towards the end, he writes, my question is, do I have to make more effort when I'm in that state of being? If we were really in the state of being, we would be beyond effort. That is, the state of being is the state in which ego doesn't rise. When ego doesn't rise, there's no one to make any effort. But the fact is, we're not yet in that state of being, because so long as we're aware of sensations and perceptions and body and mind and all these things, we're not yet in the state of being. In order to be in the state of being, we need to hold on to our being. So we have to constantly make effort to turn our attention more and more back towards ourselves. He says, even if I make effort, it still feels the same. Of course, we're not looking for anything new. We're not trying to change our experience. We are always aware I am. But the problem is, most of the time we neglect this fundamental awareness I am, because we're so interested in other things. We have to switch our attention from our interest and our effort away from all other things back towards ourselves. As I say, even it's not a matter of turning it away from other things, turn it back towards ourselves, and thereby we withdraw it from all other things. And then he says, is it wrong to just be being as awareness? If we are just being, of course it's not wrong, but he says, is it wrong to just be? Being as awareness in which a phenomena appear. The awareness in which phenomena appear is ego. Ego, so long as we rise as ego, we are not in the state of just being. So being without, just being means being without rising as I. As Bhagavan says in verse 27 of Ulladu Napadu, Nanu diada ullenile, namadu vai ullenile. The state in which I is without rising is the state in which we are that. That refers to Brahman there. So in order to be as we actually are, we need to be without rising as I. And how to be without rising as I? In the next sentence, Bhagavan says, how to attain the annihilation of oneself in which I does not rise, except by, how exactly does he say it? Nan udikam tanam ade nadamo, without attending to the place where I rises. The place where I rises means our own being. So without attending to our own being, how to be in that, in the state of, how to reach the annihilation of oneself in which I does not rise. So it is only by self-attentiveness that we as ego can subside and thereby be in the state of just being. So long as we mistake ourselves to be the awareness in which phenomena appear, we are not just being. So we need to attend to ourselves more and more and more. The more we attend to ourselves, the less we will even notice whether phenomena are appearing or not. And if we hold on to our being, that's all. We can't do anything more than hold on to our being. By holding on to our being, we as ego will subside and dissolve back into our source. So his last question was, is it wrong to just be, being awareness in which a phenomena appear, and wait till ego dissolves, or do I actively have to do something more? We don't actively have to do anything. We have to just hold on to our being. That is not an activity, but it requires effort. To hold on to our being requires effort, because as ego, the nature of ego is to be constantly going out under the sway of its vasanas. So in order to hold on to our being, effort is required, but it's not an activity. It's an effort that results in just being, and that results in subsidence of the rising I, subsidence of ego. So I hope that's an adequate answer to that question. Does anyone have any questions about this?
Can I have some follow-up question, please, Michael?
Yes.
It was me who asked the question.
Okay.
I see where I made the mistakes. Thank you. It was very extremely helpful what you said.
Yes.
So basically, what's important is that no matter what phenomena appears, we should ask to whom it appears and abide in that self-attention.
We shouldn't. We need not ask to whom it appears. We need to investigate to whom it appears. Investigate to whom it appears means turn our attention back towards ourselves.
Yes, that's clear. Thank you so much.
Namaskaram, Michael.
Yes.
I have one question, and I think I know the answer, but I want to ask. I think I understand that we turn attention to ourselves.
Yes.
We don't worry about thoughts. Let them come, let they go.
Yeah.
We are aware of how our vasanas take us to some action and not try to be attached.
Yeah.
The question that came to my mind, and the answer I think is, should I am here now and I'm aware of all these things and I'm recognizing it. I'd ask myself, should I be worried about coming back again and restarting it? Which the answer is, don't worry about that. Do where you are with what you have.
Yes.
The other question following up to that is, in this whole thing of consciousness, awareness, bliss, we are here separate from our awareness, and when we merge back in, should I worry about ever being outcast again, or again not worry? about it right now.
Who is cast out or outcast? It is ego. Who has cast the ego out? Ego itself has cast itself out. So when we know ourselves as we actually are, as Bhagavan says in verse 17 of Upadesha Undiyya, Manatin uruve maravado chava manamenam ondrile undipara magam nerakum idundipara. That means Manatin uruve maravado chava. When we investigate the form of the mind without forgetting, that is, in other words, without allowing our attention to be diverted away towards anything else, there's no such thing as mind at all. This is the direct path for all. That is, if we, and when he says there, when we investigate the manatinuruve, the form of the mind there is referring to ego. As he clarifies in the next verse, when he says, enangale manam, mind, thoughts alone are the mind, but of all the thoughts, the thought called I alone is the root. The thought called I means ego, and he's therefore what the mind essentially is just this thought I. In other words, it's just ego. So what he means by the form of the mind is this, not the, because the mind consists of two parts, so to speak, the subject and all the objects. So all the other thoughts, feelings, emotions, everything, they're all the phenomena that constitute the mind, they are all objects. But who is the one who knows those? That is the chit aspect of the mind, that is ego. So it's that the form of the mind that we have to attend to is what he referred to in the previous verse as manatin, manam tan oli uru ordale, the mind investigating its own form of light. In other words, that basic awareness I am, that is what we're to investigate. If we investigate that, we will, it's not that by investigating that we will destroy the mind, though it's often described as manonasa, destruction of mind, or destruction of ego. What it actually is seeing that there never was any such thing in the first place. If you see a rope and mistake it to be a snake, however much you try to kill that snake by beating it, by any number of sadhanas, by all your yogas and so many different things, we can try and beat that. We cannot kill it. The only way to kill it is to look at it carefully. If we look at it carefully, we will see, oh, it's just a rope. It never was a snake. Once you get that knowledge that it's just a rope, that snake can never reappear. Because the knowledge, the correct knowledge that it is a rope, will destroy that false perception in such a way it can never rise again. So when we know ourselves as we actually are, we will know that we never rose as ego. So the question of whether we will rise again as ego just will not, I mean, there's no room for that question. There's no, we seem to be ego now only because of, as Bhagavan said, because of avichara, because of non-investigation. In other words, because of Promada. If we look at ourselves, we will see that we were never ego. We will see what we actually are, and therefore we were never ego. But until this ego is completely dissolved in the light of pure awareness that we actually are, the effort is necessary. That is, by looking within, we begin to get some prajna, some clear awareness of ourself. But our aim is to become sthita prajna, as Krishna says in the Gita. That state of sthita prajna is the state in which we see what we actually are, and thereby see that we were never ego. Then we can never be shaken from that state, because that is our eternal state. Even now we are that.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
The next question we have is from Sebastian. Bhagavan translated Adi Sankara's Viveka Chudamani, and there Nirvikalpa Samadhi is mentioned as a requirement for self-knowledge. I assume he meant something different than what the yogis mean, right? Since Adi Shankaras advocated mainly the path of self-knowledge.
Yes, that is the concept of samadhi is not actually a concept that is native to Vedanta or Advaita. The term is used in Advaita only in answer to the yogis. But as Bhagavan clarified, Nirvikalpa Samadhi means samadhi without any vikalpas. Vikalpas can be interpreted in various ways. We can take it to mean thought, we can make it to mean any type of differences, any changes are all vikalpas. So the Nirvikalpa Samadhi that is attained by pranayama and other yoga practices is manolaya. That is what is called Kevala Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the ordinary Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi Bhagavan talks about is the real Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which he called Sahaja Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That is our natural state. Our natural state of just being, that is what is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Sahaja Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or just Sahaja Samadhi for short. So the only samadhi that is necessary is that Sahaja Samadhi. And Bhagavan talks in his Bhagavan's introduction, though Sahaja Samadhi is our goal, that is just being aware of ourselves as we actually are, that is Sahaja Samadhi. But Bhagavan also talks about the practice of Nirvikalpa, of Sahaja Samadhi. In the Avatarike, or introduction that he wrote, his Tamil translation of Drisya Viveka. In Drisya Viveka, there's a lot of mention about 6 different types of samadhi. But so Bhagavan translated Drisya Viveka as it is, but in his introduction, he clarifies, he talks about the Sahaja Samadhi Parakata, the practice of Sahaja Samadhi. And what is that practice of Sahaja Samadhi? He describes it very beautifully. Purva samskaritinal, by the samskara means vasanas, by the former samskaras, or the samskaras coming from from previous times, at totritilulla drishti niki, that is removing the sight of everything that appears as a result of the samskaras, drishti niki, tannaye, oneself alone, bahyanta drishti vedam indri, without the distinction of seeing outside or inside. Epodum nadum Sahaja Samadhi Parakatal. That means by the practice of Sahaja Samadhi, which is always investigating oneself without the distinction of seeing inside or outside. That is, so long as we're looking outside, we are told we need to look within. But when we actually look within, we go beyond that distinction of looking outside or inside. Because what we actually are is beyond all these differences. So we go beyond that, and thereby we give up the seeing all the things that appear as a result of our purva samskaras. So that is what Bhagavan called the practice of Sahaja Samadhi. So that is the only Samadhi we need to be concerned about. But here, because of Bhagavan uses these terms here, because he's writing in Avataraka to Drisya Viveka, in which so much is written about Samadhi. But of his own accord, Bhagavan wouldn't mention Samadhi at all, because it's totally... Why to bring... Do we come here to know about Samadhi? We come here to know who am I. So as soon as people hear terms like Sahaja Samadhi, or what is this Sahaja Samadhi? Forget about Sahaja Samadhi, know yourself, and then you'll know what Sahaja Samadhi is. You yourself are Sahaja Samadhi. So we need to be very focused on what Bhagavan's teachings actually are about. They're all about simply investigating and knowing who am I. And investigating and knowing who am I means being as we actually are. We cannot investigate I is our being. We cannot investigate our being without just being without rising as I. I hope that's a clear answer to that question.
Yes, Michael. Thank you. The next question we have is from Anand Sundaram. It seems that the self-abidance or staying in beingness seems more for ripe souls. Someone may be interested in Bhagavan's path, but may be carrying a truck full of vasanas, making self-abidance very difficult. And self-investigation may be needed for several lifetimes to reach the state of beingness. What should such people do? Should they also try self-investigation? Because of the obvious difficulty in abiding in the being, would you recommend some other concurrent practice till the strength of mind to abide in the beingness increases?
No other practice is necessary. All the other practices, they have their place, because it's only after we practiced all the other practices and found them to be inadequate that we will finally be ready to come to this practice. So Bhagavan wasn't opposed to any other practice, but no other practice is necessary because, well, no other practice is sufficient. We can do any amount of japa or dhyana or puja or any yoga, pranayama, anything. We can do any amount of it. It is not sufficient. We cannot know ourselves by all these means. And none of these are necessary, because the only thing that is necessary, that is both necessary and sufficient, is attending to ourselves. Adu Andre Podam, Bhagavan says, in the 11th paragraph of Nana, he says, if one Oravan tan sarupa madeyam varayil, nirantara swarupa smaranaye kai patravanayin, adu Andre Podam. Until one attains Swarupa, if one holds fast to uninterrupted, unbroken Swarupa Smarana, self-remembrance or self-attentiveness, Adu Andre Podam, that alone is sufficient. So Bhagavan's path is sufficient. It's also necessary, because we cannot, if we do not attend to ourselves, we cannot know this. As he says in verse 27 of Ulladu that I referred to earlier, without investigating the place where I rises, how to reach the annihilation of oneself in which I does not rise? That's a rhetorical question. It clearly means we cannot reach that annihilation of ourselves. In other words, we cannot eradicate ego without investigating what we actually are. So there are not two paths, a path of investigation and a path of abidance. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, to that extent do we subside. And to the extent to which we subside, we are thereby being as we actually are. So during the practice, we are not perfectly being as we are, but the more we attend to ourselves, the more we subside, and the closer we come to that state of just being as we actually are. And how we attain that is only by the strength of this practice, as Bhagavan makes clear in verses 8 and 9 of Upadesha. In verse 8, after talking about all the various practices of bhakti, all the various actions of bhakti, the puja, japa, and dhyana, and each one is more efficacious than the previous one. Efficacious means it's more effective in purifying the mind, which is the aim of all these different nishkamya karmas, nishkamya puja, nishkamya japa, nishkamya dhyana. The aim is to purify the mind. So more effective than the puja is the japa, more effective than the japa is the dhyana. Then in verse 8 he says, rather than anya bhava, ananya bhava, in which he is I, is the best among all. So better than all these actions is ananya bhava. Anya bhava, anya means what is other, and anya means what is not other. So anya bhava in this context implies meditating upon God as if he was something other than oneself. In other words, meditating on a name or form of God. Better than that is ananya bhava, in which he is I. Ananya bhava means meditating on nothing other, meaning nothing other than oneself, with the understanding that he is I. That is, if we understand that the God we are trying to meditate on is what is shining in our heart as I, we need not meditate on anything other than I. So meditating on nothing other than I is what Bhagavan means by avanahamahum ananya bhavam. The ananya bhava in which he is I. That he says it's naitanam uttamam, it's the best among all. So that is, in effect, what he's describing there is the practice of self-investigation, which he says is best among all. Then in the next verse, verse 9, he says, he starts Bhava Balatinal, by the strength of meditation. What meditation? By implication, it's very clear he's referring to the ananya bhava, the self-attentiveness. So by the strength of self-attentiveness, Bhava Balatinal, Bhavanatita Satbhava Irritale, being in Satbhava, being in the state of being, which transcends bhavana. Bhavana there implies meditation in the form of mental activity. That is, if you're meditating on a name or form of God or on anything other than yourself, that is a mental activity. That's what Bhagavan means by bhavana in that context. So the state of being is beyond all that mental activity. How do we go to that? How do we get beyond that state of mental activity? Only by the strength of self-attentiveness, the bhava balatinal. Being in that is parabhakti tattva. So the highest bhakti is not any amount of puja, japa, or dhyana, just attending to ourself, subsiding, and thereby being in the state of being, by the strength of that self-attentiveness. That is the supreme devotion. And then he summarizes it all in the next verse, udita idutil or dungi irital. That is subsiding in the place of which we rise, and just thereby just being in that place from which we rose. In other words, being in our own being, that is karma and bhakti, that is yoga and jnana. So this path is the culmination of all other paths. So if we are drawn to this path of Bhagavan, no other practices are necessary. Of course, sometimes we feel that because we lack sufficient love, we feel we're not attending to ourselves sufficiently. Then we pray to Bhagavan, as Bhagavan has taught us in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam. But that's not really diverting away from this path of self-attentiveness, because what are we praying for? We're praying for that love to attend to ourselves. And if we're asking Bhagavan for the love to attend to ourselves, if our asking is sincere, we'll be trying to attend to ourselves. So that the prayers Bhagavan teaches us through Arunachala Stuti Panchakam are all supports to us in this practice of self-attentiveness. They're not an alternative, they're just they're supports. Because, as Bhagavan made clear, bhakti is the mother of jnana. That is, in order to, when we attend to ourselves, we subside. So attending to ourselves is complete self-surrender. So in order to be willing to surrender ourselves, we need all-consuming love to know and to be what we actually are. That all-consuming love is bhakti. That's why Bhagavan said bhakti is the mother of jnana. All the difficulty we face is entirely because of our lack of love to be as we actually are. Because we still have so much liking, so much taste in going outwards and experiencing other things. So if we pray as Bhagavan has taught us to pray in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, that's a great support to us in this path of self-investigation. But praying doesn't just mean repeating the words. There has to be that yearning in the heart. True prayer is not the words, but the yearning that is behind those words. But by reciting Bhagavan's words, those words themselves will have the power to kindle in our heart that yearning. Bhagavan's words are so powerful.
Thank you, Michael. The next question we have is from Sebastian. I find the famous analogy of water and waves, gold and ornaments, clay and pots very useful when it comes to understanding the fact that everything is awareness. So thoughts would be only illusory superimpositions on the only true substance of Sachidananda. If I see mind and thoughts arising, and I see them as the illusory snake, and I am the rope, so thoughts in that sense will become our own being. Is this a useful way to attend to ourselves?
That is, so long as we're aware of thoughts or phenomena of any kind, we always experience them as things other than ourselves. So there's this seeming duality of subject-object duality. They are, whatever we're aware of is objects, we are the subject. So a more useful way of applying this same idea, that is, whatever appears to whom? It appears to us. So whatever appears should remind us of our own being, rather than trying to see our being in other things, which is, that's just a mental imagination. Because so long as we see them as other, they seem to be other than our being. But all these things appear only because we are. So whatever may appear should remind us of our own being, remind us of our presence. So many thoughts are constantly rising in the mind. How do we know these? Because we're present. So we should take them as we should take every thought, every phenomena that appears as a reminder of our presence, our being, and thereby turn our attention back to our being. Because the whole aim is to turn our attention to ourself. And turning our attention to ourself entails withdrawing it from everything else. I don't know who asked that question, but is it clear what I said?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, what I meant was basically like I don't want to see thoughts like an enemy, and I don't want to stress out about them. So I would say like, okay, so the teachings of Sri Bhagavan are basically that we should always attend to ourselves, and we should like see ourselves in everything. But now that you corrected myself, it's not like we should see or project an imagination, but it's basically be reminded of our presence when we see
Exactly.
these other alleged phenomena. Yes.
Yes, the thoughts are our friend because they remind us of our own being. They're constantly telling us, don't look at us, look at yourself. That is how we should take it.
Thank you.
The next question we have is from Colleen. How important is to this spiritual path to have read and to be in constant connection to the scriptures like Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and others?
There's a vast, vast forest of scriptures in Vivekachudamani, Shankara himself. He's the master of all these texts. He's written vast commentaries on all the major Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra, the Bhagavad Gita. But he himself warns in Vivekachudamani about what he calls Sastra Jala Maharanya, the great forest of sastras. So we shouldn't get caught up in that big dark forest of sastras. But when Bhagavan translated that, instead of Sastra Jala Maharanya, oh, no, sorry. Adi Shankara says, I think Adi Shankara says Sabda Jala Maharanya. Sabda means sound. But he's referring to the Sastra. To make it clear, when Bhagavan translated it, he translated it as Sastra Jala Maharanya. So it's Bhagavan has made this very clear in the 16th paragraph of Nana. When we come to understand that the aim of all these different sastras is that we should is mano nigraha. There he said mano nigraha means restraining the mind. In other words, bringing about the subsidence of ego. That is the aim of all these sastras. When we know that, what is the use of going on reading without limit? So we are very, very fortunate. According to the need of his time, Shankara wrote commentaries on all the Prasthanatraya, the major Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita. These are called the Prasthanatraya, the three source texts of Vedanta. And after Shankara, so many other acharyas of different have interpreted these texts in different ways. Bhagavan hasn't written a commentary on all these. Bhagavan instead has summarized all these things in his teachings. So in Uladu Napadu, Upadesha Undya, Nana, Anma-vichara, Ekamma Panchakam, Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, Bhagavan has given us the essence of all of Vedanta. So if we read Bhagavan's text, we need not read anything else. And all of Bhagavan's text, it just comes to a few hundred verses. So we can very easily familiarize ourselves with these texts. So if we've got these Bhagavan's main works, his original writings, we've got at our fingertips. And if we want to go in a little bit into the ancient texts, Bhagavan has also given us some translations of some of the ancient texts. The Bhagavad Gita is basically a distillation of all the Upanishads. So if you read the Bhagavad Gita and understand the Bhagavad Gita, you basically understood all the Upanishads without reading them. And Bhagavan, rather than writing a commentary, whereas others have written commentary on all these Prasthanatraya, Bhagavan has just given us a summary of the Gita, which is itself a summary of all the other, of the Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutra. So Bhagavan's Bhagavad Gita Saram is the essence of the essence of all the ancient texts. So if you want to study the ancient texts, if you read Bhagavad Gita Saram or Bhagavan, that's all we really need to know from the ancient text. Bhagavan has also given it very, very clearly in his own original writings, works like Uladunapadu. But Bhagavan sometimes said that there's nothing that he has revealed that is not there in the ancient texts, which is true in the sense that what Bhagavan says what Bhagavan teaches us is in perfect accord with all those ancient texts. However, Bhagavan has not only summarized all of those ancient texts, he's also clarified, and he's given clues which are in perfect attunement with those ancient texts, but he's given us some vital clues that are not contained in any of those ancient texts. That is arguably the most important clue Bhagavan has given us. Nowhere has it been clarified as much as Bhagavan has clarified it, the nature of ego. The nature of ego is summarized by Bhagavan in verse 25 of Uladunapadu, in which he says, he describes ego as a formless demon. So it's an evil spirit, but it has no form of its own. Since it has no form of its own, it's got no separate existence of its own. So how does it come into existence? Urupatriundam, grasping form, it comes into existence. That is, as soon as we rise as ego, we project a body and identify that body as I. Consider dream, for example. We can't say when we start dreaming, but as soon as we start dreaming, we are there with a body, and through the five senses of body, we see an external world in exactly the same way. But as soon as we rise as ego in the waking state, we project this body, identify it as ourself, and through the five senses of this body, we project this world. So ego comes into existence grasping form. That means as soon as we rise as ego, we project and grasp this body as I. Urupatri Nikkam, grasping form, it stands. That implies, just like we cannot come into existence without projecting and grasping a body as I, we cannot stand or endure as ego without constantly grasping this body as I. But we don't just stop with grasping this body as I. We then begin to grasp so many other forms through our outward going attention. That's what Bhagavan refers to in the third sentence, in which he says, Urupatri undu mika ongam. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. That is, the food on which ego lives is constantly attending to forms. Forms, it means vishayas, or objects, phenomena, things other than ourselves, because ego itself is formless. It has got no form of its own. So whatever forms it grasps are things other than itself. So it's constantly attending to things other than ourselves. We cannot come into existence or stand without attending to other things. We cannot, and attending to other things is the food on which we flourish. And then he says, Uruvittu urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. Because it can't stand for a moment without grasping form. If it leaves one form, it has to grasp another form. So the very nature of ego is to constantly grasp form. In other words, constantly attend to and be aware of things other than itself, objects or phenomena or vishayas. But then the very important sentence, Tedinal autem pidicum. That's a very simple sentence. Literally, it means if seeking, it takes flight. It will take flight. What does he mean by if seeking? What is to seek what? That is, it implies if ego seeks itself or seeks its own reality, instead of constantly grasping things other than itself, if it tries to grasp itself, if it seeks to grasp itself, or it seeks to know its own reality, who am I? Autem pidicum, it'll run away, it'll take flight. What he means by that is the ego rises, stands, and flourishes to the extent to which we attend to things other than ourselves. but we as ego subside to the extent to which we attend to ourselves. This is such an important principle, such an important practical clue that Bhagavan has given us. So how do we surrender ourselves? We want to surrender ourselves, since the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to other things, but to subside by attending to itself. How is it to attend? How is it to surrender itself? Obviously, the obvious answer is only by attending to itself. So this path of self-investigation is not only the path of jnana, path of knowing ourselves as we actually are, it's also the path of surrender, the path of bhakti. So Bhagavan has in summarizing all the ancient Vedantic sastras, Bhagavan has simplified and clarified things. And Bhagavan, all of Bhagavan's teachings are constantly putting emphasis on the path, on the practice, that is. People read all the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra, the Bhagavad Gita, but they still don't grasp what is to be done. It's given there, but they overlook it. Whereas Bhagavan constantly is digging in the need for us to attend to ourselves. That's the only practice that is necessary. So if we have understood that, it's not necessary to read all the... I don't think even Bhagavan had read all the Upanishads. He was familiar with some well-known passages here and there. He would occasionally refer to Ekameva Dvaityam, one only without a second, and Tattvamasi. All the major ideas of the Upanishads Bhagavan was familiar with, but I don't think Bhagavan had ever read. But sometimes very learned pundits will come to Bhagavan with questions. Bhagavan may not have read the text, but they would ask Bhagavan about the text. Bhagavan would ask them to show the text. He would read it and he would explain it perfectly, because he is the source of all these things. So he alone is the one who is able to clarify what the real intention behind all these ancient texts was.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael.
Right.
The next question we have is from Sridhar. Where will I merge or really go? But I desire to merge in the lingam on top of Bhagavan's Samadhi. As one walks around the ashram, we see statements like absorbed in Arunachala at various Samadhis. It doesn't seem to mean the actual mountain, but in the self. Is this correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is, if we pay close attention to what Bhagavan sings in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, he's constantly talking about the external form of the hill and simultaneously talking about it shining in our heart as eye. Sirana Sonagiri Sirakavarum Chitsarupanamire. He said, "Oh Lord, who are Chitsvarupa, whose very nature is awareness, shining gloriously as the sublime Sonagiri." So he's constantly he's constantly emphasizing it appears externally in that form, but its reality is what is shining in our heart as eye. So yes, the first part of the question is, where is I to merge? There's only one place where I can merge. I can merge only in I. That is the rising I, the I that has risen, is ego, which is the adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body. The source or place from which it has risen is the pure awareness I am. That is the ego is nothing but pure awareness, but it's pure awareness that seems to be mixed and conflated with adjuncts. But essentially what it is just pure awareness. Take the snake and the rope, for example. What is actually there is only a rope, but on that rope there is superimposed an idea, oh, this is a snake. The idea this is a snake is the upadi, the superimposed adjunct. But the underlying reality is the rope. Likewise, the underlying reality of ego is the pure awareness I am. So that is the source from which it has risen. So where will I merge? It'll merge back into I. Bhagavan puts it beautifully in the final verse of let me see if I can find it, of Uludunabdu Anabandam. But this is actually a verse that Bhagavan translated from one of the Upanishads, one of the minor Upanishads. It's translated from the Kata Shruti, the Kata Rudra Upanishad, which is also sometimes known as the Kata Shruti Upanishad. What Bhagavan says in this verse is, I shall truly pertain Akila Vedanta Siddhanta Saram, the essence or core of the final conclusion of all of Vedanta. Akila Vedanta Siddhanta Sarate Aham Unmayaha Arivan. I will truly say that. Aham Setu, I dying, Aham Adu Ahil. If I becomes that, Arivuru Av Aham Ade Micham. That is, if I dying, I become that I, which is the form of awareness, the nature of awareness, alone is what remains. So that clearly implies when the I that is to die is ego, and when ego dies, what remains is that Brahman, and that I, whose nature is which is the form of awareness, Arivuru. In the Sanskrit verse, it is slightly differently. So Swayam Mrutva, I dying, Swayam Bhutva, I being, Swayam Eva Avishyate. That alone is what will remain. So when I dies, I alone will remain, in other words. So that means the rising I has merged back into the being I. They're the same I, but the being I is the underlying reality. The rising I is a superimposed appearance. So the appearance merges back into the reality. The snake merges back into the rope. And it merges only when we see the rope as it actually is, does the snake merge. Likewise, only when we see ourselves as we actually are, does ego merge back into that pure I, the being I that we actually are. And that being I, that is Arunachala. So that is what is meant by merging in Arunachala. Wait a second. I think Bhagavan also says there's something very similar in verse 3 of Arunachala Pancharatnam. Ahamukama anda amalamati tannal, by that amala, that pristine, that pure, that blemishless, immaculate mind that is turned ahamukam, that is turned to face itself. Ahamidutan engum, aware, by that mind investigating where the I rises, into ein dei, ahavuruve, the ahavuruve means the form of I. In other words, Atma-swarupa, nangarindu, knowing it well, munne nadi. Munne means three waters. That refers to the ocean, because the ocean is sometimes called three waters because it consists of the water from the rivers, from the rain, and I've forgotten what it is. But anyway, it's called munne, the three waters. It refers to the ocean. Munne nadi pol, like a river merging the ocean, they merge in you, Arunachala. So he's clearly indicating here what is merging in Arunachala when we turn within to investigate what we actually are, and thereby know ourselves as we actually are, we merge in Arunachala. That means Arunachala is what we actually are. As he very clearly said in the previous verse, verse 2, he says, Nityamum nan endru idia nadituvei nadituveyal. Since you are always dancing in the heart as I, umper tan idiom endriduva tam. They say your name is heart. I often used to wonder about this because Bhagavan says you're dancing in the heart. Since you're dancing in the heart, since you're always dancing in the heart, they say your name is heart. Since you're always dancing in the heart as I, they say your name is heart. But in one sense, he says that he's dancing in the heart, and the next son he says heart is your name. So in other words, he is the heart. So I used to puzzle about this, why there's a seeming difference between being in the heart and being the heart. Then it occurred to me, that is what heart means. That is, we use the word heart in many different contexts. But basically the heart means the center or the core of something. So if there's something other than the heart in the heart, that other thing is the heart of the heart. But if we go to the ultimate heart, the ultimate center, the center of everything, that center of everything is the ultimate heart. And what is in that is only the heart itself. That is, what is in the heart is only the heart. Because if there was something other than the heart in the heart, so the Arunachala is dancing in the heart as I, that means that Arunachala is the heart, and he's in the heart. That is, in that heart that is Arunachala, and that is I, there is nothing other than that. So what's in it is it itself, because it is the ultimate center. In a certain sense, for example, we can say ego is the heart of all experience, because whatever experience there is, who is the experiencer of it? It's ego. So ego is the center of all its experience. But ego is the adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body. So what is the heart of ego? It is I am. And that what is in that I am is only I am. So the I am is the ultimate heart, and that is Arunachala. So that is where we merge. Is that an adequate answer to that question?
Yes, Michael. Thank you. That was very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I think that was the end of the questions. So anyone have any other questions that you want to ask? Okay. Yeah, I just have something to share, Michael. So when I started this practice of self-investigation, I was like so curious and interested to know what this is. So after getting some idea or some understanding of what the practice is giving up of everything, giving up of this I itself, and focus on myself by giving up of everything else. I feel it is becoming more and more clear that I don't have that bhakti or love to always turn within, and it's so hard. I understand that persistent practice is what we need, and the Bhagavan's teachings and your talks about them is really helping us to continue in this path. Without this, it's we'll just forget this and move on in the life. So thank you so much for all your time and explanation on all of this.
That is, when we investigate who am I, if we're really investigating who am I correctly, the first thing we come to know is I am totally lacking in love to practice this. That's the first thing we know about ourselves. But then what are we to do? We need to, obviously, we shouldn't give up. Oh, I don't have love for this. I may as well go back to the worldly life. No, because nothing is going to satisfy us, nothing other than this. So we have to, though we lack the love, we have to try. And the only way to cultivate the love, Bhagavan has made clear, is by persistent practice. So the very fact that we even had a curiosity to learn about this shows that is the seed of love. But Bhagavan, by his immense grace, his his infinite love and compassion, he put that seed of love in our heart. So it's we need to repay him for this great gift by nurturing this love, by trying more and more to put it into practice. Of course, we'll always feel we're not doing it enough. We're not doing it enough. When we do it enough, we won't be there to say, now I'm doing it enough, because we'll be completely swallowed by him. Until then, our practice is always inadequate. But we have to keep on trying, because Bhagavan made it clear, no effort made in this path will ever go in vain. And even a little effort made in this path is worth any amount of effort made in any other path. So Bhagavan has given us such a great treasure.
And as you say, we are not interested in anything else.
Bhagavan prayed, great treasure of grace, but found without seeking. Remove my weakness, so he's given us such a great treasure of grace. Yes, so you were saying?
No, Michael. I was just saying, like, as you said, the life is also showing us that there is no happiness outside, and
we still continue to look for happiness outside, but we are constantly being reminded.
Right.
But no, it's a fool's errand to look for happiness outside ourselves.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. More.
Thank you so much. Namo.